The first car came around the bend so fast I had to slam the tractor brake with both boots. My hay trailer jolted behind me. The front bales shifted, and for 1 second all I could see through the dust was the chrome grille of a white SUV pointed straight at the nose of my tractor, on a road that was never built for two-way traffic, my private farm road. The woman driving the SUV threw both hands up like I was the problem, and right behind her were 3 more vehicles: a pickup, a golf cart with 2 teenagers in it, and a delivery van with a Cedar Ridge Estates package label taped to the dashboard. Farther back, through the thick cloud of gravel dust, I could see even more headlights coming from the direction of the subdivision's back gate, a gate that was supposed to be locked. It had been locked for years, under strict, non-negotiable conditions: emergency access only, fire department key only, no residents, no deliveries, no daily traffic, and absolutely no shortcut. I climbed down from the tractor, and the SUV driver rolled down her window just enough to complain, "You're blocking the exit." I looked past her at the line of cars sitting on my gravel, their tires half off the shoulder, dust settling over my fence wire, and the hay I was hauling to the south pasture. "This isn't an exit," I said calmly. "This is my farm road." She pointed impatiently behind her. "The HOA opened the back gate. They said we could use this way while the main entrance is backed up." That was when I saw the sign. It was mounted on a temporary post beside Cedar Ridge's rear gate, right where their manicured subdivision road ended and my rough gravel road began. Cedar Ridge back gate, resident exit, shortcut to county road. Underneath it, someone had taped a printed arrow pointing to Farm Road 18. But my road was not Farm Road 18. It did not have a county number, and it certainly did not belong to Cedar Ridge. Suddenly, the delivery van tried to squeeze around the SUV and clipped one of my fence posts. The wire snapped tight, the post leaned heavily, and my cattle in the pasture spooked away from the road. The driver got out, looked at the damage, and shrugged. The route notes said this was approved. Approved. That word almost made me laugh. That was when the Homeowners Association president came walking through the open back gate with a clipboard in her hand and a property manager beside her. She was wearing a white Cedar Ridge polo, expensive sunglasses, and the exact same expression every HOA president gets when they think their local inconvenience gives them legal authority over someone else's land. She told me I needed to move my tractor. I told her she needed to close her gate. She claimed the back gate had been temporarily opened for resident convenience during main entrance improvements. I told her that her convenience was outright trespassing across my private road. She insisted the road was a historic access corridor. I reminded her that historic did not mean public. And when she threatened that if I kept blocking residents she would call the sheriff, I pointed directly to the broken fence post, the delivery van, the long line of cars, and the illegal shortcut sign. "Good," I said. "Call him," because sitting right in my truck, I had the deed, the survey, the county road map, the subdivision approval file, the emergency access permit, and the old letter where my father explicitly refused the developer's request to use our farm road as a second entrance. By the end of that afternoon, the sheriff had documented the trespass. The county had confirmed Cedar Ridge's back gate was emergency only. The fire marshal ordered it locked again, and the HOA residents learned the hard way that their convenient shortcut was never legal. County records closed it for good. My farm road was never pretty. It was gravel, clay, dust, patched culvert pipe, and old fence line that turned chalky white under July tires and held puddles deep enough to hide potholes in March if you did not know where to steer. It curved past the hay barn, crossed a cattle guard, ran along the east pasture, and came out near the county road by the mailbox my father welded himself. It was a working road, not a scenic drive, not a resident exit, and definitely not a shortcut for people who did not want to sit at their HOA's main gate. My father built most of it with a borrowed grader and far more stubbornness than money. He laid the base where the old wagon track used to be, hauled gravel in small loads because that was what he could afford, dug the drainage ditch by hand in places where the machine could not reach, and installed the cattle guard after one of our cows figured out how to push through a loose gate to visit the neighbor's soybean field. Every single part of that road had a specific purpose. The wide spot by the hay barn was for the feed truck. The curve before the south pasture was for turning a livestock trailer. The culvert near the low ditch kept spring runoff from washing out the base, and the soft shoulders full of roots, fence posts, and drainage were designed for agriculture, not to support daily residential traffic. That road served our farm, not the world. Cedar Ridge Estates came later, when a developer bought the land north of us and sold it as luxury rural living, complete with a stone entrance sign, decorative ponds, split-rail fencing, wide paved streets named after horses and trees, and a resort-style clubhouse. Their brochures showed gorgeous sunsets over fields they did not actually own, and marketed the area as a peaceful country escape. My father used to say, the only thing those people wanted from the country was the view. During their planning stage, the developer had approached him about using our farm road as a secondary access route, promising it would help traffic flow, be used lightly, and that they would be good neighbors. My father said no, not maybe, not later, just no. He knew exactly what would happen. One emergency route becomes occasional use becomes convenience. Convenience becomes expectation, and expectation becomes someone standing on your land telling you it has always been this way. He kept that written letter, and I still had it. The county eventually approved Cedar Ridge with one main entrance off the public road and one rear gate strictly for emergency and fire access only. The rear gate sat near the edge of my farm road, but the approval file was crystal clear. It was not a public connection, not a resident shortcut, not a delivery route, and not a second entrance. It was mandated to stay locked, operating only with a fire department Knox box and authorized emergency use. For years, that arrangement worked beautifully. The gate stayed locked, fire had a key, residents used their main entrance, and I used my farm road for tractors, hay, feed, vet trucks, equipment trailers, and walking out to check fences before sunset. But then Cedar Ridge got a new HOA president and a new property manager, right when their main entrance needed extensive upgrades. New gate arms, cameras, decal readers, and repaving near the guardhouse. When morning traffic backed up and residents complained on their private forum, the board did not want to admit they had created a traffic nightmare by turning a maintenance project into a luxury security upgrade. So they looked toward the old rear gate, viewing my farm road the exact same way the developer once had, as a convenient solution they did not own. If you have ever had an HOA point to your driveway, your ranch road, your field lane, your dock path, or your private gate, and call it temporary access, pay close attention to that word, because temporary is often the first costume trespass wears. So keep your documents, save the notices, keep your cameras running, and stay with this story. These situations are exactly why property owners need to know what county records say before an HOA turns convenience into control. And subscribe when you get the chance, because stories like this are not won by louder arguments. They are won by the solid paper trail nobody at the HOA bothered to read. I had that paper trail, while Cedar Ridge only had a shortcut sign. The first sign that something was wrong was the dust. It wasn't normal farm dust. I knew what that looked like after my tractor passed, after the feed truck came through, or after a dry wind ran across the gravel. This was entirely different. It hung heavily in the air in the evenings, drifting over the hay barn, settling on the water troughs, coating the gate latch, and leaving a pale film on the black mailbox. When I drove the road after chores, I saw fresh tire tracks cutting the corners, in places my farm equipment never touched. Then I found the delivery labels stuck in the grass near the cattle guard, half covered in dirt. Cedar Ridge Estates, back gate delivery. I stood there holding that scrap of paper, looking down the road toward the subdivision fence line, and felt my stomach tighten. That night, I checked the security camera at the hay barn. At 7:14 a.m., a silver sedan came through from the Cedar Ridge side, followed by a landscaping pickup at 7:22, a golf cart at 7:38, a delivery van at 8:03, and 2 SUVs at 8:17. Not a single one of them belonged on my road. The next day, I emailed the Cedar Ridge Management Company, stating clearly that vehicles were trespassing on my private farm road, where no public access or resident easement existed, demanding they confirm the rear gate would remain locked. Their reply came 6 hours later, written like a thick fog machine. During temporary main entrance improvements, Cedar Ridge has implemented limited access adjustments to improve traffic safety and resident flow. I replied with one definitive sentence. No Cedar Ridge resident, vendor, delivery driver, guest, or contractor has permission to use my farm road. No response came. 2 mornings later, I was hauling hay to the south pasture when that white SUV nearly met the front of my tractor on a narrow stretch of road where one side dropped into a drainage ditch and the other ran tight against the fence. There was simply no safe way for an SUV, a pickup, a golf cart, a delivery van, and my loaded tractor to pass each other without someone leaving the road. The SUV driver insisted the HOA told residents the back gate was open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and the delivery driver showed me his phone, where the official route note read, "Use Cedar Ridge back gate to Farm Road 18. Avoid main entrance congestion." They had literally renamed my private road inside a commercial delivery system. I walked to the back gate and saw the entire illegal setup. The gate was thrown wide open, the lock hung uselessly from the chain like decoration, and temporary signs directed residents toward my road, labeling it a resident exit and a shortcut to County Road. There were deep tire marks all over the soft shoulder, gravel knocked into the ditch, golf cart tracks in the grass, a fresh dent along one rail of my cattle guard, and a leaning fence post where the delivery van had clipped it. I methodically took high-resolution photos of everything: the open gate, the signs, the tire tracks, the broken post, the dented cattle guard, the delivery route note, license plates, passing vehicles, and the long line of residents backing up because my tractor had nowhere to go. That was when HOA President Elaine Porter arrived, carrying the practiced calm of someone who mistakes condescension for leadership. She said, "We need you to move your equipment so residents can exit safely." I said, "This road is not an exit." She claimed Cedar Ridge had used the rear connection historically. I reminded her that emergency access was not resident traffic. She said their management company had reviewed access options. I asked if they had a recorded easement. She evaded, calling it a temporary community traffic adjustment. When I demanded again to see a recorded easement, she snapped, "You're being unreasonable." I stood my ground. "You opened a gate onto my private road and sent traffic through my farm." She argued that the main entrance project created a hardship and that Cedar Ridge was permitted to use the back gate for safety. I told her the back gate was strictly for fire and emergency access, to which she smoothly replied, "Exactly. Traffic congestion is a safety concern." The exact kind of twisted HOA logic that sounds clever only inside a closed board meeting. When she threatened to contact law enforcement if I didn't stop obstructing vehicles, I looked at the line of waiting residents, some annoyed, some confused, and some clearly believing I was just a stubborn farmer blocking their approved route. So I stepped to the side, held up my phone, recorded Elaine stating on video that the HOA had opened the back gate for daily resident traffic, and said, "Please call the sheriff." Her expression flickered instantly. She clearly did not expect me to actually want law enforcement there. While we waited for the deputy, I did what my father would have done. I stopped talking and started collecting. I recorded the traffic line without shoving the camera in anyone's face, photographed the gate hardware, took close-ups of every sign, and the HOA's temporary camera, photographed the delivery van's route note with the driver's permission, captured the broken fence post from 3 angles, and filmed my cattle moving nervously away from the road as another golf cart rattled past. Then I walked back to my truck and pulled out my thick legal folder, the one I kept behind the seat, because Cedar Ridge had been testing boundaries for years. That folder contained an arsenal of undeniable proof: my original deed, the certified survey, the tax parcel map, the county road map, maintenance invoices for the gravel, the culvert repair receipt, the cattle guard invoice, photos of my father working on the road, the developer's old letter requesting an access easement, my father's written refusal, the Cedar Ridge subdivision approval file, and the emergency access permit proving the back gate was strictly for fire and emergency use only. I had not gathered those records because I wanted a fight. I gathered them because people with clipboards love to confuse farmer fatigue with legal permission. When the sheriff's deputy arrived 20 minutes later, Elaine reached him first, spinning her rehearsed tale about temporary approved routes, traffic safety hazards, and an unreasonable farmer interfering with community access. The deputy listened patiently, then walked over to me. I simply said, "This is my private farm road. Cedar Ridge has no resident access easement, and their back gate is emergency only, under county approval." They opened it and directed traffic directly onto my land. Then, I handed him the folder. He read the county road map first, confirming my road was not public. Then he reviewed the deed, the survey, the subdivision approval, and read the emergency access language out loud. Emergency fire access only. Gate to remain locked, except authorized emergency access or approved maintenance. No public or resident traffic access across adjacent private agricultural road without recorded easement and road standard approval. The deputy looked directly at Elaine. "Do you have a recorded easement?" She tried to claim the HOA had a temporary access policy, but he pressed again. "Do you have a recorded easement?" When she argued that the county allowed a back gate, he countered sharply. "For emergency access?" The property manager tried to interject that the board believed the gate could be used temporarily due to safety concerns at the main entrance, but the deputy shut it down instantly. "Belief is not an easement." That was the exact moment Elaine stopped performing for the crowd and started staring nervously at the paperwork. I immediately called my attorney, Mark Ellison, who instructed me to keep the road blocked only enough to stop unauthorized entry without creating unsafe traffic conflicts, advising me not to touch their gate hardware or argue with residents. Then he gave me the most critical directive of the day: call the county road department and the fire marshal immediately. Emergency gates come with strict legal conditions. When I reached the county permit officer and gave him the subdivision name, I heard keys clicking rapidly in the background before he confirmed that the rear gate was listed exclusively for emergency access and that no secondary public access had ever been approved. The fire marshal's office took it even more seriously, stating bluntly that using an emergency gate for daily traffic compromises emergency response, creates massive legal liability, and violates site approval conditions, and they immediately dispatched an officer to the scene. While we waited, more residents tried to drive through, but the deputy began turning them around. When one driver complained that an HOA email told them the shortcut was open, I asked to see it on his phone. The subject line was devastating evidence: "Back gate open for resident convenience." The email explicitly stated the gate would operate from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. during main entrance improvements, advising residents to use the rear exit to avoid congestion while instructing vendors and delivery drivers to follow updated route notes. The HOA had not accidentally failed to stop traffic. They had officially and intentionally created it. I forwarded the screenshot directly to Mark, who replied with 3 simple words: "Save that immediately." When the fire marshal arrived in a county pickup with a code enforcement officer right behind him, Elaine tried to launch into her speech again, but the marshal walked straight past her to the gate. He scrutinized the resident exit sign, the shortcut arrow, the open chain, and the fresh tire tracks cutting from Cedar Ridge pavement onto my gravel, before turning to the property manager. Who authorized daily use of this emergency gate? The manager claimed the board approved a temporary measure, but the marshal cut him off. That is not what I asked. When Elaine argued about safety issues at the main entrance, the fire marshal delivered a cold reality check. You do not solve a gate backup by converting emergency access into daily resident traffic across private property. Then the county permit officer arrived on site with the master file, and that file ended the argument forever. Cedar Ridge's original subdivision approval identified one single public resident entrance, allowing a rear emergency gate solely because the fire department required secondary emergency reach. The approval explicitly stated the gate was never to function as a public road connection, resident exit, vendor route, delivery route, or alternate entrance without separate county approval, road standard review, and a recorded access easement from the adjacent landowner. There was no recorded easement, no road dedication, no right-of-way, no temporary haul route permit, no secondary entrance approval, and absolutely no permission from me. And right there in the county file was the old developer request asking my father for access across the farm road, with my father's written refusal attached directly behind it. I had seen the copy in my own folder, but seeing it preserved in the official county archives did something deep inside me. It made my father part of that room. He had known this exact day would come, and he had put his refusal in permanent writing so I would never have to rely on memory. When the permit officer read the binding restriction out loud, prohibiting daily resident traffic across private agricultural land without a recorded easement, Elaine weakly protested, "But the road connects." The deputy immediately corrected her. "A connection is not permission." The code enforcement officer documented the illegal signs, the open gate, the trespassing traffic, and the property damage, while the fire marshal officially ordered Cedar Ridge to close and secure the back gate immediately, issuing a formal notice of violation for improper gate operation and unauthorized traffic routing. When Elaine desperately asked if residents could continue using it just for the rest of the day, the fire marshal looked at the long line of cars, the broken fence post, the dented cattle guard, and my tractor still sitting there with hay on the trailer, and gave her one single, non-negotiable word: no. There would be no meeting, no committee, no resident survey, no lifestyle adjustment. Just no. The property manager humiliatedly removed the shortcut signs while the deputy watched. The fire marshal forced them to lock the chain, and residents were ordered to turn around and face the main entrance traffic. As one frustrated pickup driver rolled down his window and muttered, "They told us this was approved," I replied cleanly, "It wasn't." He glared directly at Elaine, and for the first time that day, so did everyone else. The official on-site county review happened 3 days later, and by then, the illegal shortcut had already caused extensive, undeniable damage. The gravel base was severely rutted near the gate. The shoulder had collapsed into the drainage ditch in 2 separate spots. The cattle guard rail was bent. A fence post was snapped at ground level. Heavy dust had contaminated the hay barn, and my security cameras had logged more than 60 unauthorized vehicles in just 2 days. 60 vehicles on a private farm road built solely for tractors and livestock trailers. The review attended by county road officials, the fire marshal, code enforcement, the sheriff's deputy, my attorney Mark, Elaine, the property manager, and Cedar Ridge's legal counsel was completely cold and professional, which made it far worse for the HOA. The county measured the gate location, photographed the connection to my gravel, inspected the road width, shoulders and sight lines, and formally confirmed what we already knew. The road did not meet public standards. No easement existed, and the permit strictly forbade resident convenience use. The fire marshal emphasized that once emergency gates are used daily by residents and delivery drivers, they lose their controlled emergency status. chains get left open, approaches get damaged, and in a real fire where seconds dictate life or death, compromised access is a fatal liability. Elaine desperately tried to shift blame to the management company. The property manager blamed board direction, and board members claimed they assumed legal reviews were completed, while Cedar Ridge's attorney smartly stayed completely silent. Then Mark laid out our overwhelming damage file: high-resolution camera stills, exact vehicle counts, delivery route screenshots, the incriminating HOA email, photos of the illegal signs and fence destruction, comprehensive repair estimates for the cattle guard, gravel restoration, fence rebuilding and dust cleanup, hay contamination proof, official county maps, and my father's refusal letter. Mark stated formally on the record that Cedar Ridge had knowingly created an unauthorized traffic route, induced widespread resident and vendor trespass, damaged private agricultural property, and violated emergency fire gate conditions. The sheriff's deputy added a heavy legal warning: any future resident incursions after this official notice would be treated as deliberate criminal trespass, removing any claim that drivers were simply following HOA instructions. The county issued strict, binding compliance orders. The back gate was to remain permanently locked for emergency use only. All shortcut and resident exit signs were to be destroyed. Resident and vendor routing notices had to be formally retracted, and proof of compliance was required immediately under threat of escalating fines, with my property damages to be resolved separately. By the next morning, I received a copy of the mandatory retraction email sent to all residents. Due to county clarification, the rear gate is not available for resident, vendor, guest, or delivery use. Residents must use the main entrance. Do not enter the adjacent private farm road. Prior communication regarding temporary back gate use is withdrawn. It was stiff, it was deeply embarrassed, and it was absolutely beautiful. The public HOA meeting that week turned into an absolute disaster for the board, as furious residents packed the clubhouse over the loss of their shortcut and the looming scandal. When Elaine tried to spin the narrative that the board had simply acted to protect resident safety during temporary congestion, Mark took the floor and projected our documents onto the big screen one after another: the county roadmap showing no public right-of-way, the certified survey proving private ownership, the subdivision approval mandating an emergency-only gate, my father's historical refusal letter, the HOA's own incriminating email, videos of 60 trespassing vehicles, photos of the property destruction, the county violation notice, and the fire marshal's binding order. When a resident stood up and asked in disbelief, "So we were told to use his private farm road, and now the county closed our back gate because it was never legal?" Elaine stammered that the situation was more nuanced than that. Another homeowner shouted back, "It sounds exactly like that." The entire room turned on the board instantly, because that is the universal truth about HOA shortcuts. Residents love them right up until they realize the shortcut comes with massive legal bills. Before the night ended, the board voted overwhelmingly to pay for all my road and fence repairs, reimburse 100% of my attorney fees, strip Elaine of all gate authority, and review the property manager's contract. Elaine was the lone vote against it, to the surprise of no one. The restoration took 2 full weeks. Cedar Ridge paid for fresh gravel loads, shoulder stabilization, drainage ditch cleanup, professional cattle guard repair, fence post replacement, hay barn dust decontamination, structural culvert inspections, my attorney fees, and the installation of 2 high-definition security cameras monitoring the gate line. The formal legal settlement contained the exact phrase I demanded: Cedar Ridge Estates has no public access. Resident access, vendor access, delivery access, shortcut right, secondary entrance right, or easement over the private farm road. I read that sentence 3 times, then filed it away in the exact same folder as my father's refusal letter. The county forced Cedar Ridge to submit an updated emergency access plan. The fire marshal conducted 2 surprise inspections of the locked chain over the next month. Commercial delivery companies permanently deleted the route notes from their GPS systems, and the property manager issued strict directives warning vendors that touching the back gate would result in immediate contract termination. While some residents remained bitter about losing their shortcut, most were furious at the HOA for lying to them about its legality. One neighbor even stopped by my road entrance while I was fixing a fence to personally apologize, admitting he had driven it twice, because the HOA email made it sound official, and swearing he never would have trespassed had he known the truth. I believed him, which is exactly why the HOA's arrogance was so dangerous. It transformed everyday, law-abiding neighbors into unwitting trespassers, while painting me as an unreasonable villain simply for defending my own land. Elaine didn't survive the fallout. At the next board meeting, residents relentlessly interrogated her over the wasted legal fees, county violations, and damage payouts, forcing the board to pass a binding rule requiring formal title reviews, county verification, and written legal opinion before any future access changes could ever be proposed. A rule that common sense should have dictated from the start. The property manager was fired at the end of the season, and Elaine was stripped of her presidency before quietly resigning from the board altogether. From that day on, whenever construction or morning traffic backed up the main entrance, Cedar Ridge residents had to sit patiently in line, just like everyone else in the world who does not own a private farm road. At the sharp bend where Cedar Ridge's rear gate faced my property, I installed a permanent, highly visible sign, Private Farm Road, no HOA access, county verified. Underneath it, I bolted a smaller, blunt reminder, emergency gate is not a shortcut. Maybe it was slightly petty, or maybe it was purely educational, but either way, it worked flawlessly. The road went completely quiet again, returning to the rhythmic sounds of my tractor, hay wagons, the feed truck, the vet's rig, my pickup, and the occasional deer crossing at dusk. There were no more SUVs rushing to school drop-off, no golf carts tearing up the grass, no delivery vans clipping fence posts, and no arrogant board members claiming my agricultural road was their amenity. A few days after the final load of gravel was graded and packed, I drove my tractor down the lane at sunrise. Fresh gravel crunched cleanly under the tires, the repaired fence wire gleamed tightly in the morning light, and the cattle grazed peacefully without looking up. A cloud of fine dust lifted into the air behind my trailer. But it was my dust this time, the old kind, the honest kind, the kind generated by hard agricultural work instead of illegal residential trespass. I thought about my father's refusal letter resting safely inside my folder. He had understood the human psychology of development far better than the planners did, knowing instinctively that once a private farm road is viewed as a convenient shortcut, people stop seeing it as private property. They begin seeing it as underused, then shared, then expected, and finally, as theirs by right. But official county records do not care about neighborhood convenience. A back gate does not magically become a public thoroughfare just because an HOA breaks the lock. A homemade shortcut sign does not manufacture a legal easement. A commercial delivery note does not transform farm gravel into a dedicated county road. A board president's email does not override a recorded property deed, and an emergency fire corridor does not become daily commuter traffic simply because the main entrance is backed up. If an HOA ever tries to route cars, construction crews, landscaping vendors, golf carts, delivery drivers, or impatient residents down your private road, do not waste your breath standing in the dust, arguing with every driver who passes. Record the situation calmly. Photograph every illegal sign. Document the vehicle license plates. Preserve the HOA emails, and screenshot the delivery route notes. Pull your original deed, your certified survey, your county tax map, the developer's subdivision approval file, and the emergency gate permit. Call the sheriff to document the physical trespass, but make sure you call the county planning office and the fire marshal immediately. Because official permit files almost always state the hard legal truths that HOA boards hope nobody will ever bother to read. Cedar Ridge tried to turn their emergency back gate into a convenient shortcut across my family farm road, but the county records closed it down for good. And if this story kept you listening to the very end, tell me in the comments whether you think Cedar Ridge made an honest mistake or knowingly exploited a private farm road just because it was convenient. Share this with anyone who owns land near an HOA, a rural ranch road, an agricultural gate, or any so-called temporary access point. And subscribe right now for more real-life stories where ordinary property owners protect their land, not by shouting louder, but by keeping the meticulous records that prove the road was never theirs to take.